Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy, a proud member of the Sightcraft Network. The goal of this podcast is to demystify therapy, what can happen in therapy, and the wide array of conversations you can have in and about therapy. Through personal experiences, guests will talk about therapy, their experiences with it, and how psychology and therapy are present in many places in their lives, with lots of authenticity and a touch of humor. Here is your host, Steve Bisson.
Alors, c'est le dernier épisode avant la relance. This is the last episode before the relaunch. My name is Steve Bisson, and this is Finding Your Way, Resilience, Development, and Action. If you haven't listened to episode 198, it's just me meandering thoughts, and I hope you go back and listen to those because they're not just meandering. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But for episode 199, we're going to meet with Caren Paskel. Caren Paskel is someone who has had her own share of loss in her life, and I'm sure she's going to talk about that. She's exploring resilience and empathy and grief for mental health awareness during challenging times. She is someone that has a book out. She has her own story that she'd like to share, a transformative journey, actually. And she wants to be able to share her own journey and how it could help others. So I hope you enjoyed it, and here's the interview. GetFree.ai. Yes, you've heard me talk about it previously in other episodes, but I'm going to talk about it again because GetFree.ai is just a great service. Imagine being able to pay attention to your clients all the time instead of writing notes and making sure that the note's going to sound good and how are you going to write that note and things like that. GetFree.ai liberates you from making sure that you're writing what the client is saying, because it is keeping track of what you're saying and will create, after the end of every session, a progress note. But it goes above and beyond that. Not only does it create a progress note, it also gives you suggestions for goals, gives you even a mental status if you've asked questions around that, as well as being able to write a letter for your client to know what you talked about. So that's the great thing. It saves me time, it saves me a lot of aggravation, and it just speeds up the progress note process so well. And for $99 a month, I know that that's nothing. That's worth my time. That's worth my money. You know, the best part of it too is that if you want to go and put in the code Steve50 when you get the service, at the checkout code is Steve50, you get $50 off your first month. And if you get a whole year, you save a whole 10% for the whole year. So again, Steve50 at checkout for getfree.ai will give you $50 off for the first month, and like I said, get a full year, get 10% off, get freed from writing notes, get freed from always scribbling while you're talking to a client, and just paying attention to your client so they win out, you win out, everybody wins. And I think that this is the greatest thing. And if you're up to a point where you got to change the treatment plan, well, the goals are generated for you. So getfree.ai, code Steve50 to save $50 on your first month. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 199. You know, you get in touch with people through email in my job a lot. And I got to say that I get, not a word of a lie, I get about 5 to 6 emails a week for guests. And most of the time I read it for half a second and go, yeah, not a fit. And then I got Caren Paskel's thing, and I was reading it. I'm like, okay, since I've already read till the bottom, including her bio, I'm interested. And then I went to her website and I'm like, I got to meet this woman. There's a story here that I think everyone will enjoy hearing on Finding Your Way, Resilience, Development, and Action. So Caren Paskel, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Steve, so much. That was a nice introduction. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, you know, pre-interview, we just had this conversation. Anyone who knows me, and I think that's going to be something you're going to echo about you, is that I can't lie. So if I didn't feel these things, I couldn't tell you these things. I would be like, all right, and welcome, Caren, for Finding Your Way. And that's all I would have said. I always talk about authenticity. And that's even in our short conversation before this, our exchange on email has really struck me as you're very authentic. So I really want people to hear that and see that. So usually just want to look, you know, I've started to know you obviously with the stuff I've looked at, but my audience may not know you. So I'd like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caren Paskel, and I'm just grateful, really, what we were talking about before is to show up in my glory and share my story. And that is how I roll. That is how I live. That is how I educate. That is how I contribute to the world. And my greatest gift, I believe, is this desire to develop myself and improve on myself. And that is my purpose. I know it's my purpose to be in my highest vibration and to live in the celebration that I can achieve this state of self-actualization. And so that's the path I've been on for quite a while. And I've always been seeking that. And I didn't know that it was an inward journey until I took a yoga class at 16 when I was having panic and anxiety in school. And that was the first deeper connection I ever made to myself that I thought, what is this? And now I know it was a spiritual connection. And it was different from all the other connections that I had made, so far, I guess, in life that were pretty, external, based on the external. So this was internal, and I wanted more of it. I wanted more of it. So I really have a long past and relationship now with yoga being such a healthy path for me in my forward movement in my life. I went to art school, but I involved art and yoga together. I ended up teaching even before I got certified. It was very natural for me to talk about life and transformation and everything. It was very therapeutic. That was for me so therapeutic to hear what the teacher was saying about life as I was moving and breathing. So I was able to emulate that at quite a young age without any training. So I knew it was natural for me and I enjoyed it. Plus, I could also make some money on the side while I was in school. So I kept on the path, but I had a lot of mental health issues. I mean, I was in a very unhealthy relationship and had an unhealthy relationship with men, with food, with my body. I had a lot of depression, sleep disorders, and because of all this mental stuff, I developed, physical issues as well, and inflammation at a young age, and fatigue, and I was on countless medications. So yoga was seriously my lifeline. And I did go through a lot of therapy as well. So just talking about what I was going through and having that soundboard was really, really, really vital for me, especially because it was someone different than a family member. So there was, no bias and judgment. I felt safe, right? That was the biggest thing. And, through all of this, I just stayed on the path of self-development. And I ended up really just starting to study more of the universal values of life and the philosophy versus the yoga poses, the physical stuff. And that's where things took a real big turn for me, like all that education up for life that wasn't in my regular schooling. And I thought, why doesn't everyone have this? This is like the roadmap to how to be a human being in the world and to evolve. It just made no sense that it was so sensible. Why isn't this taught? So that became my mission. I gotta teach this. And it really became my highest desire to fill up with that and also contribute and make an impact with that. So I ended up opening my own studios because I thought it'd be a better way that I could contribute and educate and lead. And all during the same time is when I became in my most impactful relationship with my late husband. And, he was the epitome of the power of self-belief. And even though I had grown so much and evolved, I still had a lot of physical and mental issues. I was struggling with my health and I stayed small. I really wasn't showing up in the big way that I am now. And he was. And so I needed that mirror in my life. But unfortunately, he became very ill, very young age. He was 12 years younger than me. So he was diagnosed with brain cancer at 28. We were just 1 year married. And it was a total shock. Through our worlds upside down. Our businesses were affected, our families, everything. We had to reevaluate. And but it created the biggest life shift for me to become a caregiver, to be of service in that way, to navigate life and take care of him in that way. And whatever came our way, it was the greatest challenge. So bringing you up to date, he ended up passing away, and I had to rebuild myself from, at the time feeling like I lost the greatest thing in my life that I had. And how do I continue on? Well, I used his power of self-belief, and I'm living for him. And that's my legacy. I wrote a book called The Power of Self-Belief. So that's sort of my story. I'm sure there's a lot more in there, but you'll ask me the right questions.
Asking your right questions. I mean, there's like 12 questions that came to mind. More importantly, sorry for your loss.
Thank
Uh,
you.
that's always difficult. I was listening to your Maslow hierarchy of needs and yoga. I do yoga, not regularly, but I do definitely do yoga. And if it wasn't for downward dog, I would do it more regularly. I'll be perfectly honest with you. People are like, that's the easiest one. I'm like, for some of you, some of us who don't
It's
have any
not.
flexibility,
No.
sucks.
Especially for men, it's usually the hardest because you're actually carrying the more muscle, and like you have less flexibility. So down dog is kind of torturesome for a lot
You're
of men.
you're so nice thinking I have muscle.
You have more muscle mass, I'm sure, even if you think you don't.
I know I'm just trying to be funny here, but no, and I think that what one of the things that you didn't say in so many words, and I'd like you to continue talking about that is, you said, why aren't they teaching that in school? I've learned in my life that what I learned in my master's means nothing unless I practice different ways of learning it. Hierarchy of needs of Maslow is one thing. Knowing how to implement that, know where people are at, and how to implement that. That can be taught in people's words. It can't be like that stuff. I lost my best friend when I was 12 in a fire. You can't teach what grief is until you live grief, and I don't know what it is to lose a partner, and I'm going to knock on wood because I don't want to lose my partner in my life. I can't teach that to people. I can't know how you feel. And once you realize that most lessons in life are never going to be taught in a book and you can't read about it, you can learn from them, but it's not going to be, you can't know it until you live it, is what I heard you say for the most part. And when I ran for about 7 years or 8 years, and I never got that runner's high. Everyone talked about it. I never got it. And I ran half marathons. I only did 2 half marathons. I'm lazy, never did a full one. But the point is that when I did yoga, I got the spiritual breathing, and I got to, and I can't teach that. And I can't tell people about that because it is, to me, learning to breathe in that way is easier than breathing while I'm talking to you right now. I don't know why, but that's how it is for me. So I don't know what you want to expand on, but that's really what I found in what you were saying is very impactful among many other things, because going to therapy is so important. You learn so much about yourself, and that third party, God, that's so important. But I don't know where you want to go with all this, but I want to throw out my observations and maybe we can continue talking.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So I think that what helped me the most from reading the highest knowledge known to mankind, which come from the Vedas, and Vedas just means knowledge, right? And it was presented in such a practical way. They were values to live by. And I believe that for me, they were a preventative, meaning they helped to prepare me for all that came my way. And I think that is something we can do is we can prepare ourselves for life's eventualities. But I do believe that yes, you can explain all you can explain and teach all you can teach about how to navigate, let's say, losing a loved one or going through that. But until you really go through it, it is you do learn through that experience. But I do my best to prepare people because if you are alive and you remain alive and you continue your life, there's going to be challenges no matter who you are and where you are, no matter how many people you have in your life, how much money you have. There will be these pairs of opposites that we will come to face. There will be things that happen to you that you may not be that think would ever happen or imagine. I didn't imagine this could ever happen. So although I'm not saying you should imagine all these bad things might happen, that's a pessimist. But but reminding ourselves that we're human and that life is full of challenge and change every day, and to be ready for that, that's where I think the values to live by and the yoga and the self-development and all the things I did and continue to do, they allow me to lean in and find the blessings. It's like I don't feel anymore that I really lost anything. In fact, I don't even relate to that word. It just isn't even in my vocabulary because I look for the blessings in everything. And because my husband was such a blessing for the time I was with, that's what I focus on. I focus on what I gained from him, even though he's not here. And so it doesn't feel like a loss anymore. It really did in the beginning. I will tell you, it really felt like a huge loss. But I feel so full. Like he gave me so much. And I continue to focus on those blessings, and that gratitude fills me up so much every day. And then, in fact, that's one of the values is just gratitude. And until I really learned to practice that full-heartedly and to understand what that really meant, not just making a gratitude journal and listing some things off. It's like a feeling and an acute awareness of the countless blessings that are occurring right now in this given moment. And so when I'm tuned into that, it lifts me to such a high frequency that nothing disturbs me. So it's very hard for me to get disturbed at this point. Yes, little things like, that's like annoying, but not to like deeply, deeply disturb my inner peace. This took a long, long time though to get to this place. So that's kind of what I share with people is that this is a lifelong progression and you're not just a work in progress. It actually takes work to progress and you have to choose to work on yourself. And yeah, so that's where I am, the conversation. That's what came up.
Well, so basically for me, you're saying that my progress and growth in life is not going to come from a podcast.
Um well, you could, you could be inspired from
Right.
learning here, and that could really spark the growth. But when what you do with it, it's what you do with it that matters, right? So if you're
That's where I was
inspired,
trying to lead you to,
yeah,
actually.
you gotta, it's very hard, the my position, because I remember my dad telling me, like, he was trying to explain to someone what I do, right? And he said, it's not tangible what you do. Like you can't really, what is tangible about saying transformation and happiness and growth? It's very hard to sell that. But that's why I have to grow myself. Like if I'm not doing it, then you're not going to believe me. But if I say, hey, I've created this kind of life and this kind of resilience and thriving from all the things that have happened, so can you. Because I don't think I'm special. I think I'm unique and everybody's unique. So if I can do it, you can do it. But I can't do it for you. That's the thing. And so the
Bingo.
people, yes, the person who is even in therapy, we know all this. It's like you could have the best therapist in the world, but if you're not going to take their words and really let them sink in and go apply, then you're going to be sitting in the same seat and listening to the same, feedback for the rest of your life.
Right. And I think that, I went to one of my first yoga studios, and I don't know why I walked into this group because they were all, for lack of a better word, experienced. And I was, I did it at home, and I never did it in the studio with other people. And all I could do in my head as I was stuck in this thing that as a therapist, I know, but as a human, I don't always practice is I'm comparing myself to everyone in the room. And then at one point, I got up and left. And one of the other people walked out and followed me out. And they said, I know, and I've been there. She didn't even know me. She just said, I know, and I've been there. Don't compare yourself to others. You're doing fantastic. I'm not even looking at you, but I know you're doing fantastic because you showed up. And to me, that was most like It wasn't like, yeah, you're the best yoga person in the world or whatever. She just took away all the stress that I had about comparisons. And I didn't know this woman, and I've never seen her again for the record. And she has no clue she gave me that gift. But it was me growing into, oh, practice what you preach. Also, don't compare yourself to others. You're a progress. And yoga is always about progress. Even yoga masters will tell you I'm still progressing. And so I
Absolutely.
started reading and reading and reading. And now suddenly that 30-second interaction at best grew me. And that's why I think one of the things I wish, this is what I thought you were saying, is that it's not one thing that's going to change you. There's like, yeah, there's aha moments, but if you don't do nothing with your aha moment, it doesn't really matter. And I know I'm talking about therapy here, but I know you're talking about life in general. It's not about, oh, look, I know the Maslow hierarchy of needs, but self actualization is really freaking hard.
Yeah.
And getting there is going to be work. And I think that unfortunately, I think a lot of people are looking for that magic pill that's going to make them feel better, lose weight, look good, be attractive to other people, or whatever. And that's not life. Life is growing on other parts. So I don't know if I'm resonating your message in a different
Yes.
light, but I wanted to kind of like give you my feedback as to what you said because it's absolutely true. It's not about one moment, it's about taking that moment and growing it so you can be better.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that about your yoga teacher because I always said that. And I see, continue to say it in my classes and in all my programs. Like, and I have this app, it's called Marco Polo, and I have community group programs on it. And what it is it's off social media, so there's no ads, and you can communicate through videos. And when I first introduced this to my group in my program, I was so excited about because everyone who was in my program all wanted to make a greater impact in the world. They all wanted to grow, progress. They all wanted to you know, just be out there and be visible. And yet they had so much resistance to this app. They didn't want to show up and they didn't want to see themselves. And they were all, pointing out their flaws and, oh, I don't like how I look and all of these things. And I'm like, this is exactly why we have this, because this is your starting place for being visible and self-love also and being seen. And I said, just show up. That's all I kept saying. And that's what resonated when you were saying that. Because yes, I've said it on my mat, on the mat a million times to all my, groups in yoga, but even in transformation, I say it to people who you would never believe need this message, who you would think I mean, they're in corporate and they're running these big things, and yet on a silly app showing their video within a safe space and only our group, there's such resistance and they're having such a hard time. There's self-loathing and self-doubt and insecurity. And all of this came to the surface. And I said, can you imagine you're trying to go out there and become a transformational coach now, and you can't show up for yourself in this and feel good in this group? So there's a lot to work at. And it really exposed all of us and showing up for yourself. And people kept saying, well, I have to listen. I feel burdened because there's 6 different videos and I have to watch them. I said, who said you had to watch them? I'm the facilitator. I have to watch them. That's my job. I'm just asking you for you to show up for yourself and share your story. Just whatever it is, like we talked about, that authentic self. And it was so hard for everyone. And slowly but surely, it took so much time and practice to gain that trust in themselves, to believe in themselves, to show up for themselves. And now my Marco Polo groups are just exploding. And it's amazing how much, that, like you said, how much growth can come from don't compare, because a lot of people did that. Well, this person's here and that person's there. And it's like, do not compare. This is a non-judgmental place. I had to say all the things over and over and over again to help people feel like they are enough, they are worthy. And as soon as they started to believe that and show up in the space, then they were able to go out and be better leaders. They were able to quit their jobs, leave relationships, and do all the things that they were trying to do before but couldn't. And also go on social media and speak, live because they want to get a client and they want to be a coach and all these things. So that's what really resonated for me. And yeah, it's always about inspired action is what I want to say too, to what you said, where I don't tell people what to do, right? I say, wait for an inspiration. And I looked this word up, inspired, and it comes from this root word ethos. It means enthusiasm. Ethos is the root word, which means inspired by God. And I thought that was so amazing. I'm like, okay, what if you just waited and not really waited, but instead of just doing things to do them, be inspired from that divine feeling from within. And that's a different kind of action. That's the kind of action that really changes you and makes a greater impact.
So many things that you just said mean so much to me. Thank you for being that yoga teacher, by the way. Those that, growth from yoga is spectacular. And I know that's not a manly thing to say, but I frankly don't care. Number one. Number two, I've worked with a lot of people who are, and I hate these words, I hate buzzwords, but the C-suite people. And to me, the comparison and the imposter syndrome that they live through is absolutely flabbergasting, in my experience anyway. And one of the things that I've been known to say in my sessions and with other people is comparison is a thief of joy. And whenever you compare, Karen's got something I don't, and I probably have something that Karen doesn't have. That doesn't mean Karen or me are better than each other. We're just different. But when you
Yep.
start comparing, you're always going to try to like, well, I should have hair. Sorry, I just gotta go for the easy part. For those on YouTube, go has wonderful hair, and I bald in case you didn't know. But that doesn't make you better or worse. I mean, it makes you different. And I think that that's the other part too. When you talk about inspiration. If we were all the same, it would be freaking boring.
Yeah.
And it's learning to be different and being okay with our differences. And
Celebrate them.
right. And I think that that's what I'm hearing you say too, because if you celebrate your differences and you make those efforts in order to go deeper and deeper in development, you're going to be able to share that gift. It will no longer be something to be compared or monetized, but rather be yourself.
Absolutely. That's huge. So big part of transformation and the work that I do with community and clients is all about celebrating them and every part of them, where we're at right now and where we've been and where we're going, and also those differences and the talents that we each have. So I really try to help people to see that the way that they're different is actually their superpower. And that's even in my signature talk, The Power of Self-Belief. It's like, because I speak for some nonprofits, and one of the nonprofits is for myasthenia gravis. It's an autoimmune disease. And so it's got some debilitating, effects, and people lose a lot of their abilities, very similar to the decline my husband had with brain cancer. And, I remember telling my husband, you are still you no matter what you can do. And that is enough. And there's always something you can do, and focus on that. And because I gave him that talk, he was able to write a book before, well, he wrote a book. He was able to get it out there before he died. And he reached out to a friend to help him finish it because he couldn't write on his own. And so I remind people that your differences and even how you change over life, those are to be celebrated. You can actually, give from that place. That is your mission, to be and give who you are in the world. It's actually so simple when you think about it, but we're so confused because we're taught to make money and we have to make a living. And our parents might have said, you need to go into this field because that's how you're going to make a living. And so we get involved in these activities that are really against our nature and against our differences and our talents. And that's what causes a ton of unhappiness and friction. And most of the work that I do with women and men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s and 80s, I find is they have a lack of fulfillment and purpose because they're not celebrating their gifts and talents every day. And as soon as they start to do it just a little bit, even if it's a side gig, their whole life changes, even if it doesn't involve making money. It's like, oh my God, they feel like they have, purpose and meaning in their life. And that's huge.
You said it so well. I think that one of the things that I see, no one goes on their deathbed and said, I wish I made more money or made people feel less than more often or what have you. Most people say, I wish I did better to serve my community or be there for my kids or whatever. But it's always about being, you know, there. One of the things that I really appreciate about you, and I'm thinking you feel the same way as I do, I'm happy with my job because when I'm on my deathbed, I will have no regrets about helping people and being present for the people I love. And I think that what happens as we grow older, yeah, you're a hedge fund manager that makes $5 billion, but are you happy? And I think that what you talk about, like that can't be taught in a book either. This is not something that like I'm so inspired by your husband or your late husband's ability to write a book, finish it off with his friend. How many people probably tell them, look, concentrate on your death, not on your book. And how many people probably discourage it. And I'm not trying to make it morbid. I hope you understand where I'm coming from here. It's like people will always tell you what you can't do. People will always find ways to limit you. But knowing, like doing what you inspire yourself and you do it for yourself is so much more important. As I joked around previously on my podcast, whether 5 people listen to me and you, Caren, or 5 million people listen to it, if I inspire one person or Caren inspires one person, we did our job. We did everything we could. So for me, it's never about quantity, money, or anything else, but rather what you can bring to other people. And that's why I'm so inspired by your late husband, obviously inspired by you. But when you talk about your late husband, it really makes me inspired about what we can do once we realize that we don't need to bend to other people's whims, for lack of a better word.
Well, you won't even believe, I'm only smiling over here because you won't believe the title of his book. It's called Can't Doesn't Exist. And that's
Yeah, and I
exactly
did not.
what
I swear to God, did not know. Did not know.
I know. That's why I was laughing because I didn't even say the title. And, it took, I mean, he was fighting till the very end. And there was only when he lost the right side of his body wasn't working. And that so he had a photographic memory. I mean, this guy was brilliant. He had very little schooling and was brilliant and just took certain classes to educate himself in terms of what he wanted to do and never studied, aced all the tests. I recently talked to a teacher of his that called me out of nowhere. I had no idea. And I had this great conversation and he was talking about him. It was amazing. And so when he lost his ability to read and his speech was not great and his ability to type, he felt like he had nothing else to live for. I mean, because he couldn't do, right, those things that he was
Right.
so good at. And he landed face planted in bed. I remember he just did a face plant and I remember the scene so vividly. He just kept saying, I can't do anything. I can't do anything. And I like rose up with, I swear to God, the divine power of self-belief that was transferred from him in me. And I just said, yes, you can. You wrote an entire book and you don't need to write it. It's already there. You just need someone to publish it and, get it out there. And that very day, he was inspired. This is a great way to, I know we're probably close to the end of the podcast. We're talking so much, but this is a great ending because my God, he was inspired by what I said. And that moment he took action because he could. He reached out to his personal trainer who had published a book of his own. And he was, he knew that he had self-published his own book and written a book or two. He called him and said, he didn't even ask him to do it. He was just asking him, hey, I know you know a lot about this and I have this book and I want to get it out there. Do you have any recommendations of who I could maybe have, a ghostwriter or a publicist? Or he said, dude, I'll do it with you. It'd be my pleasure. And the two of them, this was the end of my husband's life, was on purpose and in purpose and inspired. We would sit at my dining room table, all of us, and he would do Josh would do an interview, and that was the co-author, and he would interview, but I would also be in there too because I was making food or eating, whatever, and he would interview me too a little bit. And that's how the book was made. And David got to see it published. He got to see that his book got out there, which meant the world to him. And I think was one of the reasons he was able to let go because he knew I was going to be okay. He saw that I succeeded And he knew that his legacy would be carried through me in that book, and of course his family and friends. But that was, man, that to watch all that, that's why I say, even though yes, I lost his presence physically, it's like I gained so much from his 6 years with me, from this experience. I just can't imagine where I would be without him or without going through all of that. And that's why I really don't feel like a victim at all.
I mean, victim sometimes is just in our mind, right? And I know there's a pejorative term around victim, and sometimes we are victims, but most of the time, if it's a self-imposed label, it's worse. So I don't want to take away for those who think they were a victim. I'm just saying that sometimes when we self-impose it, it's worse. I know we got to wrap up, but I want people to be able to reach you. And the other thing that I'm gonna like I'll cut it off the podcast if you wish. I need to have your book up. I don't have a problem paying for it, but you need to sign it for me. I need to read it, obviously, because I'm really interested. But I know you're much more than a book, much more than a yoga. I don't know what title you have. I'll say teacher for now. But like, tell me how people can reach you. What are you working on? Stuff like that. So you can maybe hopefully inspire other people.
Absolutely. And I would be happy to sign a book for you. And yes, I wrote The Power of Self-Belief, and it is my baby. That is my baby. It has all of these beautiful teachings and lessons, but combined with the story of David and I meeting, it's like from that starting point of I had all this self-development and all these teachings, but I didn't have the power of self-belief. And that took having a human being who had that, like you said, like I had to live with it. I had to be around it. I had to see it. And then when I was deeply challenged, the worst thing that could ever happen, that was what triggered the inspiration to believe in myself. And then after he died, and I made that choice, but I had that living example. And so I share the story. There's pictures of us so that you really get the visual of our life and what happened. And so I think it's really quite beautiful and powerful read. So that's on Amazon. If you Google it, you can find it other places, Barnes and Nobles. It's in stores and stuff.
I'll make sure to link it in our show notes too.
Perfect. And then I call myself a spiritual escort. I take people, I know, that's what I thought about the other day. I'm like, I don't know how to describe myself except for taking people to the highest place that they can go, their highest potential. And I hold their hand. It's a very intimate process. I only work with one or two clients at a time to do that. So I've made room to make a greater impact. And I have launched with my team. My beautiful mentors have become a team with me, and we're launching. It's called Youthful Longevity Mastermind, and it's really for people who are in their midlife transitions with everything from maybe being a widow or divorced or possibly going through feeling health issues or signs of aging, et cetera. There's lots of transitions. So this is designed to give you immense support for your highest health and for your quality of life each and every day, including that joy and that fulfillment and purpose, and to have the community, the proximity to the health, the highest health examples as well, to be around that. Because what we've noticed is that's been the greatest support and transformation is the community of the high vibration. And so we're giving that in a new, beautiful way together. So we're launching it actually this week. And if you want to check it out, you can and see our free masterclass. You can go to www.youthfullongevity.com. So that's pretty simple. And you can watch the masterclass, and we'd love to hear from you that way. But you can check out my site, CarenPaskel.com. I know you'll share the link and get in touch with me that way as well.
And Caren spelled with a C for the record. Just want to make sure people know that.
Yes, I'm not the Karen that everyone talks about, with the K.
You're such a Karen. But no, I think that walking people through those inspiration, like those journey and that spiritual journey is, it's to me, it's such an important thing. And I know while I work with first responders and I talk about trauma and I'm a quote professional, that higher vibration and that stuff means the world to me. Because I think that if you think that life is only what you can see, then you're really not paying attention. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share and be here with you.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope that our paths cross more than this podcast, truthfully. I truly enjoyed our talk. And, this will be a joke between us. No one else will get it. But so happy you found a hot spot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this concludes episode 199, and we're saying goodbye to finding your way or finding your way through therapy. Thank you for all those who supported that podcast. It's still very relevant, but as of next week, we're going with the full rebrand, and that's Resilience Development in Action. So I hope you join me then.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States and Canada.